Hello, Grandmasters. Mike from the WCA. I want to go over a quick finish to a game with you to kind of give you an idea or some reminders of the things we talked about in class this week. So, the 12 o'clock and 2 o'clock students, we were kind of figuring out as a team when we think the opening is over in chess. It's hard to say for sure. Like some people say, anywhere between 10 and 14 moves, you start working your way into the middle game. Now, nobody is going to ring a bell or a buzzer, blow a whistle, and say, okay, everybody, the middle game has started. But there are some clues to let you guys know when the middle game has pretty much shown its face in a position. And you're looking at one here. So let's look at white first. How do you know that white is done with the opening? Well, let's toggle a few pieces. Every minor piece has either been traded or it's off the back rank, the front row, right? The bishops here are out. The knight is beautifully placed on e5. The king is castled queenside. So normally after castling every minor piece being developed and the use of the center pawns, you'll see that both teams have used all four center pawns. These two have moved and these two have moved. Those are all opening ideas. Middle game is a different story because now it's really complicated. All the pieces are out and that kind of multiplies the possibility or possibilities on the board for things to do. It can become overwhelming. So as we're starting to study the middle game, let's go over a few things that players look for when it's their turn to play. Okay, in the game that we're going to look at, it's black's turn, and you can see that black, their position is a little bit tied up and not as smooth as white's. I say that because the queen here on e7, oops, I didn't mean to move her. Let's get her back. Sorry, Big Mama. The queen here on e7 is blocking the dark square bishop. If you don't move the queen, the bishop's not going to play unless you fianchetto, which would mean you move the g-pawn. Well, that's not happening anytime soon, right? So black is kind of tied up on this line here. So white is thought to be slightly better, although it's not anything that's winning, but white is better. Black, to try to continue with their development, played a very natural move, and they simply just castled their king. Now, what could be more natural than castling? It turns out in this position, though, it gets black in a little bit of trouble. So here's why. Walk away from this video always looking at every check and capture, no matter how ridiculous they look. And Rusa told us that when she was teaching there, I mean, that was her mantra, constantly telling the students, look for every check and capture. And I have news for you guys. That doesn't mean, if you make it to master, you stop doing that. Masters do that routinely. They're in the habit of doing it all the time, but they still do it. You guys, I don't care if you're rated 800, 1800, look at every check and capture. Because once the middle game has taken place, like now for white, there's no more developing to do. Now it's time to come up with a plan. If you don't see a long-term plan, that might be because there's something shorter that you can do, like in one move, that is worthwhile. Let's take a look at the knight on e5, because that's really the only piece that can make a capture for white. Everything else is kind of too far away. But it's interesting, this knight here in the middle has four different pieces it can capture. It can capture that bishop, which is a very natural move to play. It's like, hey, why not make a fair trade? And going back, this is not a weak piece at all. This is a very well-placed bishop. It's kind of putting pressure on white's position. So if any of you thought in this position that taking that bishop is a good idea, I can't blame you. It really is. The only problem would be if you do take that bishop, how would black take back? Two pawns. So I think most masters in this position would take with the h-pawn, bringing the h-pawn closer to the middle. And as you can see with the highlight, it opens the file for the rook on h8. At least the rook there now can participate. If you go back to the original position, this rook isn't doing a thing. And it's not going to be doing anything unless this bishop gets out. So making this trade here on g6, although it is fair, it's knight for bishop, I think the trade helps black. Even if they take with their f-pawn, taking with their f-pawn doesn't quite have the same strength as the other move because the bishop, or the rook rather, is still locked up here on top. But the file, the f-file, halfway opens. And again, black is okay here. There really isn't anything terrible that white can do. Okay, so let's go back. Hopefully you agreed that taking the bishop here might not be your best choice. Well, obviously you're not taking this pawn on f7. That may be your worst move here. Just simply queen takes, for example, and you gave up a minor piece for a pawn, and you got my queen to move to do that, which gives my bishop a square on his next turn. I don't see how that helps you at all. You just gave away material, and you're helping me develop the rest of my pieces. So let's go back and start doing some serious elimination. If we're not going to take this bishop and we're not going to take this pawn, then we have to look at the last two captures. So the most natural one would be certainly to take the knight on d7. Now, from here, it's hard to make the argument that you're afraid of this piece, or you think that piece is going to do something bad to you in the future. Right now, that knight, when you take it, I think you gave up a good knight for a bad knight. And also, when white takes back, probably with the queen, because as you can see from the highlight, that queen opens the diagonal for that bishop. And, you know, say a move like queen d2 for white, opening up this line and opening this line for a rook maybe, then simply bishop d6 for black. And you can see that the rook that was doing nothing is going to come to the center. And if you really spend the time in your games examining these moves, you can pretty much eliminate a move like knight takes d7, which leaves us with the last capture. It turns out the last capture was the one that was played in the game, and it's devastating. It's very, very powerful, pretty much winning for white. Now, how do you find these moves in the first place? You find them by following the simple rule of always look for checks and captures. Now, taking the pawn on c6 is a capture, but it's also a sacrifice because there's a pawn here that can take back. When you're doing enough tactics, and that's why we always encourage you, do the tactics trainers on chesskid.com or get a puzzle book. When you do your tactics, you start to see patterns. And here, taking the pawn on c6 is actually a pretty well-known pattern. Now, first of all, does black have to accept your sacrifice? The answer is probably yes, because if you move your queen out of the way, you know, like to d6, then the knight's going to take the rook up in the corner, or on the top, rather. And when the king takes back, you lost a pawn and an exchange, rook for a minor piece, and I don't really see black's compensation. White's very solid. They have all this extra material. It's just losing. So when you take that pawn on c6, black is pretty much forced to take back. Now, to sack the piece, you needed to see the follow-up. Can you find it? So pause the video if you need to and try to get an idea in your mind for at least two more moves you might play from this position, okay? All right, my friends, hopefully you found the move queen a6 check. So this is all forced. Once they accept your sacrifice, they have no choice to be faced with this queen check here, which is very powerful because the king is forced to one of these dark squares. If he goes to b8, then he gets hit with bishop f4 check. And I hope this was the second move that you found, combining the power of the queen here on a6 and this bishop on f4, and that is not a pleasant check to get out of. If you go into the corner, hopefully you all see mate in one. You got it, Josh? Very good. Queen takes c6. Game is finished. And there wasn't really another good choice after this check. what to do. You can try to block this, and your knight is not only pinned, but here white is going to get their piece back, and life is really, really good. But here, even taking the knight might not be your best move. If I'm playing white, I might, let me see, I think this works. I might just grab the pawn here with my queen. So now I get a second pawn, and I'm going to get my minor piece back. Now, why would it be important to take this pawn? Because now you're threatening to take this knight, which would be a devastating check. Black is going to be forced to give up some more material. So that would not work out well. So let's go back to the game. After castling long, again, look at the captures. We take on c6. They pretty much take back where they have to. Then the check. So in the game, black played king c7. Do you see the follow-up? Same move, bishop f4, and black is again forced to block with a piece. White took, check, and here the king goes to d7, and I really like white's move a lot here. I think a lot of you might take this pawn here, which is winning, by the way. You keep collecting these pawns, and don't forget that you already got your piece back. But white played rook h to e1, and the idea here is to set up a discovered attack by moving this bishop, because once you move the bishop, the queen is going to come under attack from this rook, which is another concept of attacking chess. Bring in your last piece. Always increase the pressure. So in the game, black played rook to c8, maybe giving the king a flight square and holding this pawn on this square. But there really isn't much to do. If you try to get your queen out of the way, let me go back. Let's say you moved your queen off this open line, then moves like f4 might chase the queen to a pretty uncomfortable square, and then moves like queen b7, and you're in trouble here. I'm not going to go through all the lines. Just you can do it yourself. Like king e8, that should be screaming at you guys. I mean, like, look at that rook. All you have to do is move your bishop to a square like f6, and black is probably going to lose the queen in the whole house. This is really, really bad. So what happened in the game was he just decided to move the rook to give the king the square, and then rather than rush with this discovered check, just queen takes a7 check. King doesn't have many choices. You don't want to block with the rook because the queen just takes it for free. That's really bad. If you go to e8, I really like this one a lot. Going to e8, because the queen is pinned here, simply bishop to d6, attacking the queen again, and she has nowhere to go. She might as well give herself up for one of the rooks, and when you take back, the king goes to d8. I like this move, bishop takes f8, which sets up checkmate. The queen coming to the square is going to be mate. If you move your rook out of the way, giving that up, just to avoid the one mate I showed you, you're going to get mated there anyway. Can you see how? Can you see how queen e7 can be made to be a forced checkmate? Well, all you need to do is get the king to e8. You see it? Rook check. Beautiful move. King has to take, and there's the checkmate. So back here, after the queen took that pawn and gave a check, the king decided to go to d8, and then the queen did a little bit of a dance. Gave a check, king hopped out, gave a check, king hopped out, and then there's more than one way to win this game. White found a pretty simple way to play here. Just take the queen. You don't want to take with the king, because then you're going to walk into that discovery that I showed you. So in the game, black took here, and then white just simply took another pawn. And when the rook attacked the bishop retreated, and in this position, black resigned. If you count the pawns, you'll see that you're down 3 whole pawns, 2 bishops against 2 bishops, 2 rooks against 2 rooks. Black doesn't really stand a chance, okay? So remember, look for every check and capture. This video is 15 minutes long. I know you grandmasters have 15 minutes to learn more about chess, so make sure you watch it. Okay, my friends, we'll see you in class.